Hello, my name is Fernando. I'm a solutions engineer here at Replicated, and in this video, I'd like to show you how to use preflight checks to prevent the installation of an application. Let's get started. Let's start by spending a few minutes talking about what are preflight checks. So preflight checks are application level checks you can run before an application is installed, and it is part of our troubleshoot.sh open source project. I would encourage you to open up a browser and go to troubleshoot.sh and learn more about the various collectors, analyzers, and redactors that are part of this project. It is an open source project, so we welcome PRs if there's something there that you'd like to add. In Replicated, we leverage this as well. So if you're not familiar with us, Replicated helps software vendors deploy their software into complex customer environments. And preflight checks are leveraged by our customers to increase the success rate of their installations, of their customer installations. So how can we prevent an installation altogether? If you have used the preflights in the past and you're familiar with them, you know that until recently they were informational only. So in Replicated, if you ran the preflight check and it failed, the end user could still proceed and deploy the application. But in release 0.30 of Troubleshoot, we added a strict property that now you can set as part of your analyzer or collector. If this is set to true and the preflight check fails, then the installation or the update of the application is blocked. Now, some folks may say, this is great, but we not always may want to block an installation. What if I'm going to test this in my environment and I know the system requirements may not be up to par, but I like to deploy it anyway. Or maybe I'm doing a POC and I know I'm not going to have all the necessary requirements, but we still want to deploy the application. Well, first of all, you don't have to put the strict property on every analyzer or collector. Only use the strict property on the analyzers that you know that if they fail, your application will not deploy, will not work. Now, if you do want to make this optional for whatever reason, know that the strict property allows the use of templating, which is based on Sprig, on Go templating. So this means that the property could be set to true based on the config option or in the value of the license file. So in my example here, I'm going to show you the type of license. And we're only going to enforce a preflight check if the license is paid, is this type of paid. And when I go through the demo, that should become obvious. So now let's switch over to my desktop and let me walk you through this. On my desktop, I have Visual Studio Code, and we're going to use these to edit some manifests. So I've downloaded, I followed our tutorial online. I've included the link here in the video to download all the sample manifests if you want to follow along. So it comes with some sample analyzers here. I'm going to remove them. I want these this to be pretty straightforward and simple for this video. So I'm only going to keep one analyzer in the preflights, and I'm going to delete all the other ones that come in that default spec, which is the container runtime. Now this one succeeds when it finds Docker. It fails if it finds anything else. So on my cluster, I do have Docker actually, and I want this to fail. So I'm going to have it look for something else. So I have it look for containerd. So I'm going to take this preflight right here, and I'm going to change the when to be pass when equals containerd. And I always forget to update my messages. Make sure you do that too. Otherwise, the message won't make any sense. But this is a good point in that you always write the message, right? This includes support for markup, so you can definitely include links and things like that. So I'm going to copy and paste containerd and put it here in the fail message as well. Okay, so we're going to save our preflight. I'm going to use the rest of the files as they are. I'm going to switch to my terminal here, where I'm going to use the replicated CLI to create the release. This is what we refer to as the vendor CLI, the replicated CLI. So I'm going to do replicated release create, pass the default options here. Again, follow that tutorial I included at the beginning of this section to follow along. So I created my release. So now I'm going to deploy the application and test it out. So I'll switch over to the vendor portal, and from here, I just want to verify that my release is in the right channel, and it is. So since I'm here, I'm going to use the install commands from here. You can also obtain them via the replicated CLI as well. Now I'm going to switch over back to my terminal, and the first command, so there's two commands that you copy. The first one installs a kubectl plugin, kubectl-cots, and then the second command actually is kubectl-cots install, then the name of your application. So it runs both commands. Here it prompts me to enter a namespace to deploy the application to. It's doing that. Now I'm going to enter a password. I should state that the namespace is where it's going to deploy the admin console, the replicated admin console. Your application would be deployed either to the same namespace or could be deployed to a different namespace. It's really up to you. So now we're going to go to the admin console now that it got deployed in my cluster, and it's at localhost 8800. So I'm going to take this and paste it over on my browser here, and I'm going to enter the password that we were prompted to enter. Oh, now we're going to create a license. So with every replicated install, as you know, you have to have a customer license. And this is what we're going to use in a moment to make the blocking of the install optional, or toggle if you will. So we're going to download our license file, and I'm going to drag it here into the UI for the admin console. Now remember, this admin console will be running on the customer environment, right? So the email would have come through an email, or the customer would have downloaded that. This is a config option that doesn't have anything. It's just a hello world example for the Nginx deployment. But now it's running the preflights, and it should be checking the container runtime, and we should see a failure here in just a few more seconds. And now it's almost finished, and we'll see that it will still allow us to deploy the application. There we go. So you can see the container runtime did not find container D, but we still have the continue button available, which means that we can now continue and deploy the application, which is now doing. So first, let's do a strict flag. So let's add so the preflight is always going to fail. And here we'll go back into Visual Studio Code, and we're going to simply add the property strict, and it'll be indented at the same level as outcomes. So :space true. So now we'll go ahead and save this, and we'll create a new release. And then while the release runs, we'll go ahead and switch over to the admin console. We'll consume the new update. So I'll go to version history. I'll do check for update. We should see the update that just built on my terminal. And before it deploys the update, it's going to run the preflights. And as you know, the deploy button, as you can see, it's grayed out. And the message tells you it is because there's a strict analyzer. So it noticed that there's a strict property set to true. So it's waiting on its outcome to determine if it should allow you to deploy the application. In this case, it failed. So the deploy button is not available. Now you can come and see the preflights. And there's a message there that I put in. So I'm going to go back, and I'm going to now make this optional. So we're going to do this based on the license. So before we do that, let's check our documentation. So head over to docs.replicated.com, and under reference, there's template functions. So you can see there's a config context, curl context. We're going to look at the license context. So this is how to get the value of things at runtime. Config is for config options. Curl is when you install the curl cluster. License is fields from the license. So as you can see, there's a bunch here. We could use the channel name. So maybe based on where the application was downloaded from, based on the channel, you can make the strict flag optional. In this case, we're going to use license type, as that is the type of license, and it's something we can demo here. So I'm going to head over to Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to replace the true, and I'm going to use our templating. And if you saw during our slides, we're talking about how this is based on code templating, Sprig. If you're familiar with that, this should be pretty easy to use. So in this case, with license field values, we need to compare the values. So I'm going to say license field value, then the name of the field, which is license type. So this right now will return the value of this field of license type. Now, in order to set it to true, we need to compare it against the value that we want, right? So I'm going to use EQ for equals, and I'm going to compare the value of the field license type against the string prod, because prod is the value that gets assigned internally when it's a paid license. So when I create one more install with this updated preflight, now we're going to head over to the admin console again, and we're going to refresh. Looks like I had a previous release that was messed up, had some bad YAML. So we're going to ignore that. We're going to go on to the next release. And on this one, we're going to see the preflight run. Now, if you were paying attention, the license we've been using so far is a trial license, so will not equal to prod. That is why you see the deploy button available, because the strict is equals to false at right now. So that's why I'm able to proceed and just go and deploy the application. So let's go ahead and deploy the application, and then we'll update the strict flag, actually the license. We'll update the license to show how it's not able to do that. So here's that, again, it's the same container preflight here. So let's deploy the application. And now let's go ahead and update the license. So as you can see here, under license, it's set to trial, right? We slip over to the vendor portal. We're going to update the license here. We'll keep it on the unstable channel, but we make it paid. Under the covers, paid is prod. So when you download the license, it says prod in there. So we'll sync the license, and now it should say paid license, and it would actually tell us to update. Whenever you update the license, you're prompted to do a new deployment. And in this case, since now strict is true, because the values match, the deploy button is not available, and I will not be able to deploy the application. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this video helpful. If you have any more questions or would like to learn more about Replicated, go to community.replicated.com. Thank you. Goodbye.